Well, as Yogi Berra once famously said, it's deja vu all over again. Here we are a week later, and although the sunset wasn't as spectacular as it was last Saturday, I'm sitting here in my home with the understanding that service for tomorrow morning will be canceled due to the impending bad weather, bad traveling conditions, and it's best that we all stay safe, and that's, I can say amen to that. So I want to offer yet another opportunity for us to take this chance at being home, being silent, being safe. I don't know what your morning routines are like, whether or not you have a prayer time. I hope that you do, or if you just enjoy a quiet time in your study and with your loved ones. But in any event, we gathered last week and we took the opportunity to meditate on the greatness. We just took a simple concept and just tried to draw out, contemplating on the greatness of God, specifically focusing on the infinite beauty of holiness. Remember that phrase? We were trying to just meditate and spend the day, a quiet, peaceful, still day, trying to accept and absorb God's infinite beauty, the infinite beauty of His holiness. So, this time, since we're going to be spending another Sunday of quiet time, quiet reflection, time away from one another in worship, I thought I would take another little bit of a little reflection, a little piece that we could meditate on. And what I chose was Matthew 5:7, which Jesus simply shares, "Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy." And so we're simply going to spend some time. I'm going to relate to you. I'm going to use some illustrations talking about what does mercy look like, setting aside, and we'll get to it later, the ultimate portrait of mercy is what Christ has done for us, what Jesus has done for us. It's the ultimate portrait of mercy, what God has allowed to happen, that His only begotten Son be crucified and offered up, the sacrificial lamb for us. We're going to leave that aside from now as of course the ultimate portrait of mercy, of a demonstration of mercy. And I just thought I would spend a little bit of time telling you some stories, putting a face on what mercy looks like. How does it manifest itself in our everyday lives? I can tell you very honestly, within the past couple of weeks, even within my own life, there have been occasions where I wanted to withhold mercy, and I wanted to lash out and strike at people because, well, that's first and foremost, that's my sin nature, and I'm a cab driver, an ex-cab driver in New York, and the mentality of a cab driver is, I'll beat you to the next red light, and that's my fare. I'll cut you off, and I'm getting. So there's that. At any rate, I just thought, well, how can we spend another quiet morning or afternoon thinking about something that would elevate us and point us to a reality that is greater than ourselves. And what is that reality? It is focusing on the Lord and His very, very simple declaration that blessed are the merciful because they will be shown mercy. So what does mercy look like? And I'm going to start with something that's very bizarre. I would challenge you that in all of your experience sitting in the pews, for many of you, year after year, decade after decade, I would challenge you to find any preacher, teacher, minister who would ever utter the words, "I was not really a bedwetter," as a child. But that's the story I want to start with. And I'm not making light of the very, very real situation of young boys in particular who experience periods, when they're growing up, periods of bedwetting. But be that as it may, I just wanted to let you know that this one particular story that impacted me and affected me as a person, helped me to develop as a person. I was about 10 years old, and my parents let me go to this overnight camp, and it was a beautiful place called Camp Greenfield, and it was in a place called Huguenot, New York. And Huguenot, New York is sort of at this confluence of the New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania, and the Delaware Water Gap, and it's just very brilliant. And it's the first time I'd ever been to an overnight camp. It was a 2-week event, and it's the last time, by the way, that I was ever at an overnight camp. So one night, I'm asleep in my rack. I'm in the upper bunk, and I had this dream, that I had to go. Well, when I awoke in the morning, I found that my mattress was soaked, and my bedding was soaked, and I had this, you've had this before, this awful feeling in your gut, this sinking feeling. Oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? This absolute dread overcame me, and I realized that my dream wasn't just a dream, it came true. And you get the picture. So as I lay there in the morning, none of the other kids, as far as I could tell, were awake. I fretted and fretted as to what I was going to do. And I decided I had no other choice but to seek out the counselor, a man by the name of Steve, big bear of a man. Of course, I was a little person. Every adult was a big bear of a man. So I swung my legs over the rail, and I made my way down the ladder to the deck to go look and wake up Mr. Steve. And it was when I hit the floor that I noticed that the guy underneath me, the kid's name was Clive. Clive was huddled and covered himself. I'm sorry, but he covered himself with a rain poncho. From head to toe. And oh my gosh, that added to my So Mr. Steve wasn't in his rack, and I ran out of the bunk, and I went to the latrine, and I found him. He was in the latrine. Story gets better and better, doesn't it? And crying, I told him of my utter shame. Mr. Steve, at this point, was finished with his latrine duties, and he looked at me, and he put a reassuring hand on my shoulder, and he said, there was a tremendous rainstorm last night, and I've been telling the operators of the camp that the corner of our cabin has a leak and that they should fix it. So when we get back to the cabin, we'll have yours and Clive's, the kid underneath me, we'll haul all of your bedding out into the sunshine and let it dry out for the day. And you guys can give me your bedding, and we'll take it to the camp laundry, and we'll have it washed. So that's what we did. And that was the end of that. And it was never spoken of again. And as far as I know, none of the other kids were ever the wiser. And I was the recipient of mercy and grace that day. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Apartheid, switching gears, right? We were going from bedwetting to apartheid. Apartheid oppression collapsed in the early 1990s, and incredibly, Nelson Mandela is now, at this point, is now the president of South Africa. So Mandela, as president, oversees the formation of something called the Truth and Reconciliation Committee, which is charged with the task of investigating crimes committed under apartheid by both the government and by the ANC. For those of you who didn't live through that and don't recall what that was the African National Congress. So this committee operated with an interesting set of rules, one of which was to offer amnesty to anyone who would voluntarily face their accuser, admit their crime, and fully acknowledge their guilt. That person then would not be tried, not be convicted, nor be punished. The thinking was that the nation, listen to this, the thinking was that the nation needed healing, not revenge, grace, not justice. Wow. In his book, Rumors of Another World, author Philip Yancey describes this moment that occurred amidst this atmosphere of trials and hearings that was going on. And I'd like to share it with you. At one hearing, a policeman named Van der Broek recounted an incident where he and other officers shot an 18-year-old boy and burned the body, turning it on the fire like a piece of barbecue meat in order to destroy the evidence. 8 years later, Van der Broek returned to the same house and seized the boy's father. The wife was forced to watch as policemen bound her husband on a woodpile, poured gasoline over his body, and ignited it. The courtroom grew hushed as the elderly woman who had lost first her son and then her husband was given a chance to respond. "What do you want from Mr. Van der Broek?" the judge asked. She said she wanted Van der Broek to go to the place where they had burned her husband's body and gather up the dust so she could give him a decent burial. His head down, the policeman nodded agreement. Then she added a further request. "Mr. Van der Broek," she said, "took all my family away from me, and I still have a lot of love to give. Twice a month, I would like for him to come to the ghetto and spend a day with me so I can be a mother to him. And I would like Mr. Van der Broek to know that he is forgiven by God and that I forgive him too. And I would like to embrace him so he can know my forgiveness is real." Spontaneously, some in the courtroom began singing Amazing Grace as the elderly woman made her way to the witness stand. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. There's a true story. Maybe if some of you are familiar with it. A badly damaged B-17 bomber was trying to make its way back to the safety of the English coastline after a mission in Germany, and it was limping, literally limping back. Crew members were wounded, severely wounded, and some were already dead. And a Luftwaffe pilot by the name of Franz Stigler saw it fly by, and he scrambled to his Messerschmitt, and he took off with the intention that he would track it down and finish it off. But when he had done so and come up alongside of it, he found that the nose of the B-17 was missing, and there were gaping holes in the fuselage, and he could see members trying to give medical attention to one another. That the tail gunner's body was hanging lifelessly in the rear turret, and the Allied aircraft and the men inside were totally defenseless. Well, Captain Stigler, by the way, had already accumulated 29 confirmed kills. And this kill, if he were to down this B-17, he would have been awarded the second highest honor a German pilot could receive for bravery. So what did this man do? What did this Captain Stigler do? He signaled the pilot of the B-17. The pilot's name of the B-17, by the way, was Charles Brown. And he said, he signaled him in such a way as to say, Sweden, neutral territory, is 17 miles away. But the B-17 was determined to make it back to England. So knowing that there were more anti-aircraft fields that lay ahead for the Americans, Stigler, at great personal risk, because if he had been discovered that he was helping this American B-17 bomber to get back to safety, he would have been shot. There probably wouldn't have even been a trial. He would just been summarily shot. Stigler flew alongside the B-17 knowing that the German anti-aircraft batteries on the ground would not fire upon the B-17 for fear of hitting the Messerschmitt. When Stigler was reasonably sure that the B-17 wouldn't encounter any more ground fire, he saluted the Americans, and he turned and he returned back to base. The B-17 made it back to England safely with the remainder of their crew. There's a postscript to this story, this very true story. You can look it up. Stigler, the German, could never talk about what had happened because he knew he would have been shot. Brown and the rest of the American crew were sworn to secrecy because the commanders of the American side didn't want to have that notion that the German pilots were merciful. Didn't want that information out there. They wanted to know that knowledge that the Germans were ruthless and it's kill or be killed. So they were sworn to secrecy. But 37 years later, Captain Brown tracked down Captain Stigler, and they became the best of friends, traveling together and sharing their story. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Now a personal story involving my son, our son. Our son Billy used to manage a Roy Rogers restaurant in the area, and one of his customers was a man he knew to be homeless, and this homeless man would come around, nearly every night and rummaged through the dumpster for food that was being thrown away. Restaurants, at least at the time, couldn't take food home. They couldn't give food away. Anything that was cooked that wasn't sold had to be thrown away. So this man would be rummaging through the dumpster looking for food. Occasionally, this man would come into the restaurant. He'd have enough money to buy a cup of coffee. And Billy would play my son would play this little dance with this man, and where he would get some food, Billy would get some food, and he'd sit down at the table with the man, and he'd start eating a couple of French fries or whatever, and he'd cut off a piece of the burger or whatever. And then he would say, oh my gosh, I got to get back to work. I don't have a chance to finish this. Do me a favor. When you're finished, clear up the table for me. I'd really appreciate that. Have a really nice evening. So in this way, Billy was giving this man the dignity to not have to rummage through a dumpster for half-eaten food, that he could sit like a human being at a table and he could finish the hot food that was presented to him with dignity. Blessed be the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Another little portrait. Many members of our church family here at Bush Creek Church of the Brethren are faithful and loyal to the disaster response ministry of the Church of the Brethren. They travel to different parts of the country. They spend a week sleeping in uncomfortable cots and bunks and in cramped and closed quarters, sharing a bathroom with 15 other people. Getting up early every morning, many of them doing physical labor that they maybe not used to doing, and doing jobs they wouldn't even necessarily do for themselves. They give up their time and their talent. They put on the waistcloth of a servant to help and serve and share God's boundless grace. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. This is what it looks like. The name of the order of nuns that Mother Teresa came to found was called the Sisters of Mercy. Her dedication and service to the wretchedly poor of Calcutta is well known, and I read where early in her ministry she was working among the people of the Aborigine people of Australia. We think, often we think Mother Teresa and Calcutta and India, but she started her career in Australia with the Aborigines. And she records in her own diary that she came upon a man living in this little tin shack, and she went in. And she asked him, "Can I wash your clothes, make your bed, sweep up a little bit for you," things like that. And he put her off, saying, "No, I'm all right, I'm all right." And after a while, she convinced him, and during the course of her visit, he began to reach out to her. She had established a relationship with him. And he showed her a very sacred, private collection of photographs that he kept in his shirt pocket. And she told him, "You look like your father," and his father was one of the people pictured in the photographs. She said, "You look like your father," and he smiled, and he was overjoyed, in fact. And I'll let Teresa finish the service and story in her own words. "After I cleaned the room, I found in the corner of the room a big lamp full of dirt, and I said, 'Don't you light this lamp? Such a beautiful lamp, don't you light it?' And he replied, 'For whom?' Months and months and months, nobody has ever come to me. For whom will I light it? So I said, won't you light it if the sisters come to you? And he said, yes. So the sisters started going to him for only about 5 to 10 minutes a day, but they started lighting that lamp. And after some time, he got into the habit of lighting, but slowly, the sisters stopped going to him. But they used to go in the morning to see him, and then I forgot completely about that, Teresa writes. And then after 2 years, he sent word, tell Mother, my friend, the light she lit in my life is still burning. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Well, one more for all of you Shakespeare fans. Merchant of Venice is a play by William Shakespeare, and there's this famous scene where a woman, Portia is her name, and she's disguised as an out-of-town attorney, and she comes to defend her fiance, or actually her fiance's friend, Antonio. Antonio is being sued by a Jewish moneylender named Shylock, for failing to repay a loan. So since Antonio can't come up with the money, he must, according to the terms of the contract that he signed, he must forfeit a pound of his flesh so that Shylock can be repaid. But Portia pleads with Shylock for mercy. And there's that famous soliloquy from the Merchant of Venice. The quality of mercy is not strained. It droppeth as gentle rain from above upon the place beneath. It is twice blessed. It blesseth him that gives and him that takes. 'Tis mightiest in the mightiest. It becomes the throned monarch better than his crown. His scepter shows the force of temporal power, the attribute to awe and majesty wherein doth sit the dread and fear of kings. But mercy is above this sceptered sway. In other words, mercy is more powerful than the power of a king. The attribute to awe and majesty wherein doth sit the dread and fear of kings. Mercy is above this. It is enthroned in the hearts of kings, an attribute of God himself, says Mr. Shakespeare. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Sisters and brothers, in conclusion, mercy has little to do with justice. Mercy has little to do with fairness. It has little to do with how much you have or how much you don't have. It has little to do with power or position. It has little to do with allegiance or law. We don't have to deserve it. We don't have to earn it. Mercy makes one simple demand of us: to assist those who are in misery, even when that assistance comes at our own expense. Matthew Henry, in his commentary, says, we must have compassion on the souls of others and help them, pity the ignorant, instruct them, the careless, and warn them, those who are in a state of sin, and snatch them as brands out of the burning. We must have compassion on those who are in sorrow and comfort them, on those whom we have advantage against, and not be rigorous and severe with them, on those who are in want and supply them. Part of the thing that I do in preparation for sermons and even in my own private study is I really try to understand words, definitions, have meaning, even, in translations, and trying to understand the translations. And in this case, I simply went and tried to look for synonyms for mercy. And I think this is helpful. Mercy is leniency, clemency, compassion, grace, forgiveness, forbearance, quarter, tender-heartedness, kindness, sympathy, generosity. It sounds familiar, doesn't it? Sounds awfully like the fruit of the Spirit. Sounds awfully like the fruit of the Spirit. My friends, as we close, if love is the engine of God's kingdom, then mercy is the fuel that powers it. I'd like to say that again for you. If love is the engine of God's kingdom, then mercy is the fuel that powers it. One last and best, of course, we said we would get to it. One last picture to illustrate what mercy looks like and sounds like. Jesus the Christ, our Lord, stripped and tortured, beaten and humiliated, scorned and scourged, betrayed and denied, his lifeblood streaming out of his sacred body into the dirt of the soil of Golgotha, as he hung on the cross, struggling for each next breath, he looks up to his Father and he says, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." Mercy. Mercy extended to us. And we are called to extend mercy to others. May God bless you. May God keep you. Perhaps it won't snow next Sunday, and we can be together again in community, in worship, in praise, in gratitude for all that God is, for all that God has done, for all that God continues to do.
Stone would be a safe place to hide away the brokenness and pain. And I was so sure my empty eyes would be the last place the light of love would ever shine again. But then with a miracle you found me. You did what no one else could ever do. Nobody ever loved the way that you love me. Nobody ever saw what you brought alive in me. Nobody ever knew how lost I was without you. Nobody ever, only you. Never have I known this kind of freedom. I'm like a child dancing in the rain. I didn't even know that I was locked inside a prison, and only you could break break me from my chains. No one but you knew where to find me. You gave me life I never had before. Oh, nobody ever loved the way that you love me. Nobody ever saw what you brought alive in me. Nobody ever knew how lost I was without you. Nobody ever, only you. Nobody ever loved me like you. Nobody ever loved me like you. Nobody ever loved the way that you love me, and nobody ever saw what you brought alive in me. Nobody ever knew how lost I was without you. Nobody else could ever save me. Nobody ever